Today is the fourth day of the Hoddlenaut v. Craig Wright case. Today is the first day of witness testimonies. I'm standing here in the courtroom where all of the proceedings have been taking place. We have Craig Wright's legal team on this side. We have Hoddlenaut's legal team on this side, and the judge presiding up here. The first witness was Jensen. We talked a lot about the Twitter account. We talked about the tone of the tweets. We talked about the language that was used, whether it was defamatory. The second witness was Halseth. We went deep down into the rabbit hole on the Sartre blog. And there are two main sticking points of why he doubts that Craig Wright is Satoshi. One is the absence of signing. The second is the personality break in the writing style and behavior of Craig Wright and Satoshi. Unis is an educator who teaches university-level classes about Bitcoin, and the judge was very keen on getting the distinction between BTC versus BSV. After the first three witnesses for Hoddlenaut's team, we switched to Craig Wright's team. The first witness for Craig Wright's team was Stefan Matthews. Hoddlenaut's lawyer asked about various early drafts of the white paper, putting them up on the screen and asking if Matthews recognized them.
I had it on my laptop in electronic form. I also had a printed version that was on my desk. That was in 2008. I have no idea where the paper version went. I left that company. I moved internationally. My laptop was replaced.
He also asked a lot of very detailed questions about the Andreessen signing session. And the judge had a couple very interesting questions at the end.
Is it of any importance to the company that you're chairing, whether it is Satoshi Nakamoto or not?
The last witness of the day was Robert Jenkins, also called by Craig Wright's team. He was giving a lot of detail on the Vodafone firewall, and to be honest, it was a pretty short examination on both parties. So that was today. We will have another round of witnesses tomorrow, and we will also be doing witnesses into next week. Thanks for tuning in.
We are joined now by our colleague on the ground, reporter on the ground, Mills. Thank you again for joining us. Let's talk a little bit about some of these witnesses. Let's start on the Hoddlenaut side. How did Craig Wright's team handle some of these cases? What were some of the questions being asked? And did anything stand out from Hoddlenaut's witnesses' testimonies?
Yeah, there was a theme that emerged immediately that after Hoddlenaut's lawyers did their initial questions, and these aren't, I don't think, technically called expert witnesses because it wasn't like a technical, I don't know what the exact word is. They were corroborating a lot of the things that Hoddlenaut is testifying to, and they're not personal friends, but they weren't necessarily completely unattached from, the Bitcoin community at large. And that was something that Craig Wright's lawyers were really adamant about bringing up, that, asked if they hold Bitcoin, if it's the only cryptocurrency that they hold. And it was honestly a little invasive, but then it was very much also targeted on the language and if they knew Hoddlenaut on Twitter, how they came to know him. Was it through, the lightning torch? Was it through Jack Dorsey kind of building up that, he had this huge megaphone and this huge platform? So there was a lot of discussion about, would you tweet something like this? Would you retweet something like this? And at a certain point, the judge even kind of said, okay, as from the first witness where that did happen, when the lawyer for Craig Wright, when Mansauce was continuing to do that, she said, okay, we don't need to repeat this line of questioning again. And he definitely just kept going back to the violence, the strength of the language within the tweets. I think everyone was asked, would you retweet this? Would you tweet this? Are you on Twitter? How active are you on Twitter? I think just continuing to paint in that this rabid, toxic, those are his two go-to words, of this maximalist Bitcoin community on Twitter, and how damaging and rough it is as a community.
And did we feel like Hoddlenaut's witnesses were able to help validate some of the claims that Hoddlenaut's attorneys are making? Do you feel as though there's anything being left on the table right now?
I liked the three different witnesses. The first three witnesses of the day were all called by Hoddlenaut's team, and it was kind of from a more a developer perspective, an education perspective, and not culture as much, but just someone else that's very much in the space. And it felt very it felt very corroborative in the most impartial way that it could, as far as not all of them were Bitcoin maximalists, and it felt like a very well-rounded argument to kind of back up the claim that maybe the the what was tweeted was really defamatory. Maybe it was, but also kind of understanding the general community at large, and also that a lot of it was coming back on Hoddlenaut as well. So I feel like it was a good overview. It was very logical in my estimation of talking about the technical aspects. We brought up again the signing, the Andreessen signing, the Sartre blog as well. And to be honest, went very deep and out of my depth of truly understanding and being able to explain. I've been messaging with a few different experts or more expert in this topic, trying to figure out exactly what the nuance is that is being exposed in this blog post. I also may have posted a not correct version of the blog. It might have been edited from the one that we were actually seeing in court. So I posted the links to as many things that are in the evidence bundle on my Twitter, but I think that one of those was maybe already altered after the fact. So that's just a heads up. But to answer your question, it doesn't feel like there's much left on the table. It feels like a very solid argument. It also feels like the judge is with the questions that she's asking, the format for each witness goes, whoever calls the witness questions them first, and then the other side questions, and then the judge can ask any remaining questions, and then she offers up the witness. Is there anything else that you'd like to add or that you feel like you didn't get to really say? And that's the format for each and every of the 5 witnesses today. And I think based on the questions that the judge is asking, she's really tracking, she's really understanding how this all fits together. And that was even when it was with Matthews. She was asking, she asked 2 really interesting questions. One being, does the value of BSV, is that going to be directly impacted, or your company Enchain, is that going to be directly impacted whether or not Craig Wright is Satoshi? And Stefan gave an inconclusive answer. He said he couldn't answer that, and that someone else would have to answer that. And that question was also coupled with when she was kind of giving a preface. She said, for lack of a better word, BSV, a fork of Bitcoin. And it was pretty impressive to think, we've been here for 4 days, and this judge is tracking with so much of what is going on. And even knowing that her saying that obviously is in opposition with the Craig Wright side of the BSV is not a fork off of Bitcoin, but it feels like she is being very methodical, being very logical. And it's hard to say truly which way. It doesn't feel like she's leaning any way. It feels like she's kicking the tires every single time.
That seems promising given this judge's sort of lessons on Bitcoin through the first 3 days of the trial. My assumption kind of is drawing closer to she has some understanding of Bitcoin going into this, because to be able to call out a fork and understand that terminology within 4 days, I either we're dealing with one of the smartest human beings on earth, or she did her homework heading into this trial. That is promising.
There was a lot of crash course. The first 2 days were informational overload, specifically the first day because it was a crash course, and a lot of this terminology was introduced and kind of the fundamentals of what Bitcoin is. So maybe she's just the best, fastest learner there ever was. I'm jealous.
I want to now talk a little bit about Craig Wright's witnesses. we heard that testimony. The next question I was going to ask was, what was that response to the question of, does your company stand to benefit should Craig Wright be deemed Satoshi Nakamoto? What are some of the questions that Hoddlenaut's attorneys are positioning against Craig Wright's witnesses right now?
There was a pretty extensive reopening of the signing session with Andresen and specifically with Stefan Matthews. And it ended in a kind of surprising way where he said that it didn't really matter what Andresen said, his witness. And we had actual testimony and witness of Andresen from a previous court case. So that's in the evidence bundle. And so some documents of transcripts from Andresen's witness were, the topic. And when Matthews said, it doesn't matter to me what Andresen said, like kind of saying that not that he wasn't credible, but that it wasn't going to change. No matter what he said, it wouldn't change for him, for Matthews, his estimation of whether Craig Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto, which was kind of, I kind of looked around thinking, wow, that's a huge statement. And I was actually chatting with another one of the journalists in one of the breaks, and he's like, it's so funny because there's just nothing happening. It's very dull and boring. And then all of a sudden, in like 10 seconds, something's said, and it's actually pretty huge. And you're almost questioning, did I hear that right? That's big. And that was happening at a few points. The signing was a big focus. Also, the Sartre blog, as I mentioned, was both with Halseth, which was one of Hoddlenaut's witnesses, but then also with Matthews, brought up a lot of the technical components. And it was definitely pointed out that Matthews is financially, in business with Craig Wright. And that was explained and very clearly documented. And I think even talking about some of the trust, the Morgan Trust, the Panama Trust, some of the different financial interweavings, it was brought up that, there's a lot of vested interest. And it was very, I guess, funny, but it doesn't sound like a professional way to say it. But there was a time when Matthew said, well, I guess if you really want my honest opinion, something, I'm paraphrasing, something like that. And then Hoddlenaut's lawyer said, yes, we're very interested. We really actually have always wanted your honest opinion. And it was kind of, because it's so calm, there's not a lot of emotion in Craig Wright's testimony is the only time we've seen any raised voice at all, any kind of heated passion, period. Even some of the questions that are kind of, pointed or zingers, they are said in almost a deadpan monotone. And, I'm hearing them and thinking, wow, that was funny, or that was really spicy, but there isn't a lot of tone inflection. And that was actually when Craig was about to leave the stand yesterday, when the judge asked, if he had anything else he wanted to share. He said, I really like your legal system. This is really nice. Not a lot of interruptions, very calm, which is, it's true. It's a very different, not that I've spent a lot of time in court in America, but from all of the representation, especially in media of other courts, Norway has a very calm, buttoned up, very even keeled approach overall.
Interesting to hear how each of these men are handling their emotional state. I couldn't help but laugh hysterically at the thought that people would think that I just don't know why a witness would say, like, oh yeah, I'll be honest for this answer, as though implying you have not been honest in any of your responses since. Let's flip the script a little bit though. How have Craig Wright's lawyers and team been responding to some of Hoddlenaut's witnesses and some of their testimony today?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's been I would say there's an imbalance slightly, that Hoddlenaut's lawyers tend to cross-examine the Craig Wright witnesses more so than the other way around, which was also very apparent yesterday. Hoddlenaut's testimony was around 2 hours, whereas Craig Wright's was around 4, which is obviously a huge disparity, but I think there's just more questions, and I think there is a lot more storytelling. That is something, and at a couple points, the judge and different lawyers, were reminding some of Craig's witnesses, we have to kind of keep going. Like, we can't get us in the weeds with these stories. But as far as Craig Wright's lawyers, so Manshouse had been the main lawyer speaking, and then today, for the first time, we heard from another lawyer, Helle, Helle. I'm not sure on the pronunciation. I'm really working on all of my Norwegian pronunciations, but it's a lot. So he was actually the one that did the examination, both of Stephen Matthews and Robert Jenkins, the 2 witnesses of Craig Wright that were testifying today. And it feels like maybe there's been a division of, roles, and like that he's focusing on witness testimony, whereas Manshouse was more focused on the Craig Wright statement and opening. I'm still kind of piecing it together. But as far as their questions of Hoddlenaut's lawyers or Hoddlenaut's witnesses, it seemed more of a very repetitive, like, character and then language. Those are the 2 things that really felt like a very strong theme of just bringing it back to these tweets in question. I would say I can verify at least 3 times today Craig Wright's lawyer read all the tweets that are in question. I mean, this whole court case is about tweets. It is whether these tweets are defamation, whether these tweets are damaging to Craig Wright, and hinging on if Craig Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto, it is a different deal than if he is not.
I guess we will continue to see what tomorrow's batch of witnesses, and I'm assuming then Monday as well, given how many more Craig Wright witnesses are we going to be hearing from over the next 2 court days?
We have 8 more witnesses, and then Hoddlenaut has 1 more witness, which is actually 3 people, but it's a technical, and this is an expert witness. So I think it's character witnesses first and then technical. I probably have documents, to be honest, that are explaining all of these things, but they are in Norwegian, and so maybe it's lost in translation. But also, I'm not 100% sure what the exact schedule for everything is. But I know we have tomorrow, then we have Monday. We are off on Tuesday due to lawyer availability, and then Wednesday will be closing arguments. Will be the last day. Closing arguments actually start on Tuesday, like second part of the day. And then,
or Monday, second part of the day?
I mean, on Monday, second part of Monday, and then we're off Tuesday, and then closing arguments will finish on Wednesday.
And to confirm, we will not be getting a decision on this until October, correct?
That is estimated time. I'm not sure if, there's wiggle room or if that could
Of course.
change. Yeah.
Of course. We could get an OJ type verdict here and all be on our way home only to get a phone call back. Wouldn't that be nice? But I want to now talk a lot more about the judge. An instrumental piece of this case, of course, because she is the deciding vote, essentially, of how this gets ruled. We've been following along her line of questioning to get a sense of, is she really following along? Is she understanding the technical components that are vital to this case? I first want to start with just, are there any gaps in her knowledge? Are there anything that with some of the other Bitcoiners that have found their way in Oslo to this court and are supporting Hoddlenaut, are there any conversations that you're having or hearing where they're like, I just wish she knew this. I wish she had heard this fact or statement that has not yet been made or is not yet in her purview as it pertains to this case?
In the early days of the case, yes. At this point, though, it feels as though a lot of those unclarified points or unresolved deeper knowledge issues feel like they have been addressed and explained in some capacity. And it does feel as if she's very much tracking with everything that's coming now. I would say initially in the, crash course explanation of Bitcoin, some of the way that mining was explained, and even to be honest, like the cursory block size war, I think it was explained correctly in a very rudimentary way to her, but also I'm not a block war expert
Block size
at
war
all.
expert. Nope.
Block size war expert is not me. But I think at this point she has enough knowledge about the things that she needs to understand. And even her last question, when Craig Wright was testifying, was, well, why won't you sign? It seems like that would be what would really go a long way. And that she tracked, that she knew, it seems like she's really with it.
And have decisions from some of Craig's previous court cases been highlighted in either team's testimony here, both saying that in the previous case in the UK with Peter McCormick, a decision was made in favor of Craig Wright, or in Florida, a decision that essentially left more questions than answers, in my opinion, of what is Craig Wright doing?
Yeah, that was something that Hoddlenaut's lawyer brought up yesterday, actually, and he brought up the Wikipedia page of Craig Wright again today, and actually Craig's lawyer was like, Wikipedia is not a credible source. People can be changing this all the time. And it kind of we moved on past it. But why Hoddlenaut's lawyer brought it up yesterday was specifically around the conviction that, you know, Craig Wright says he's never been convicted, whereas there is a conviction, and technically he was convicted. It was 28 days jail, but he didn't do that. He did community service instead. And he said that it wasn't a criminal offense in Australia. And so that's how he doesn't count that as a conviction, but it was contempt of court. I think we talked about that briefly yesterday. But with that being said, both the McCormick cases have been highlighted a little bit. And then the numerous discovery bundles have been cited for different cases and being thousands, and one was even over 1 million pages of evidence in the case. And there is a little bit of I guess confidence coming from, you know, he has always won these kinds of cases. But the judge asked, this is how you want to prove? This is how you want to prove that you are Satoshi, instead of just doing it from a technical signing standpoint? And his answer really is that yes, he would rather relationally. And that was very similar to the witness today, Stephen Matthews, saying like, I know him. I already know it's him. He doesn't need to prove it to me. Nothing would change my mind, basically, is what he was saying. And it really goes to show that when Craig was talking about his witnesses being very much on a relational vouching level, that's very much what we're seeing. It is, I know him. I know who he is. I know what kind of guy he is. And I've witnessed, and therefore he is Satoshi Nakamoto. And that is it seems like that is the theme of the witnesses. They are less on the technical, analytical standpoint and much more on both witnesses today were in business, one of them worked at Vodafone with Craig Wright, and the other one currently with Enchain. It does feel a little like it is a different approach as far as getting evidence from these witnesses.
And I believe you had the opportunity to actually interview Hoddlenaut, and we're going to roll the tape in a moment. And I just want to establish, what did you have an opportunity to speak to Craig Wright and interview Craig Wright as well?
No, I have put out a request to interview him as well. We were actually, when we were filming this interview, we were filmed by the crew that has been filming Craig a lot. So I emailed their producer and asked, they have exclusive rights to Craig Wright's story. And so I emailed the producer to see if we could set up an interview. And I mean, they've already filmed us filming this interview. Is very meta for sure. But yeah, we were able to just grab a few minutes with Hoddlenaut after court yesterday, just to kind of see how he was feeling. That day for him yesterday really was kind of a hurdle in many ways. This is the midpoint. This is halfway through the trial. This is now, only 3 days left. This is the finish of the 4th day. But I think yesterday was what he had the most, prep in his mind and emotionally to just be able to be on the stand. And that was a new experience for him, as you'll see.
Let's can we please roll the tape?
So we just finished day 3. There was the interview with both Craig Wright and with Hoddlenaut. So we are going to do a little interview about the day, about everything that happened, fresh as we just walked out of court. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling a little bit relieved. This was, like, I guess, the hardest day. Being on the stand. I'd never been in a courtroom at all before today. No, before Monday, and never been on a stand before today. So, I think my only job was to answer truthfully, and I did so. And I think my lawyers did a good job interrogating or cross-examining Craig.
Was there anything that surprised you or that wasn't as you expected?
Not really. I hadn't much reason to expect anything. For example, I had no idea where I was gonna sit. Was I gonna sit like on my normal position, or turned out there was like this booth in the middle? I think it was a good day. I wish we had more time. I wish we had more time when Craig was on the stand. We had like lots of stuff we would like to ask him that we didn't have time to do.
Were there any questions that were asked of you that you weren't expecting or anticipating?
Not really. I don't understand the relevance of some of my opinions outside of Bitcoin, but I knew they had put them into the evidence list, so I kind of expected them to touch on it.
How are you feeling about where the judge sits after hearing the past 3 days? Do you have any gut feeling of what she's thinking and what's happening?
Not at all. My only take on the judge is I think she seems very sharp. It seems to me like she actually understands what's happening, but as to what she's thinking, I have no idea, and I kind of also prefer to not speculate on it,
Anything that you're dying to say or that's been a takeaway that you want to share?
I really appreciated having friends and family here at the court to support me. It's I'm not gonna lie, this is super stressful, it's not what I want to do at all. I would like to be anywhere but here. No surprises really. I'm very happy that I had the support I have had here, that my family has been here, that Bitcoiners have showed up to support me. Yeah, I guess.
Well, thank you very much.
And Mills, thank you for all of your reporting on the ground. I know you and the team over there are working very, very hard. Shout out Pleb Music as well for all the work he's doing. Is there anything else we want to touch on today before we wrap our recap of day 4?
No, I think that sums it up. We will hopefully get another interview with Craig Wright, another side of the story. We'll see. We'll keep you updated on that. We are doing our best to really report, and it is a little difficult to stay impartial at times, I will admit, and I am trying to do my best, and it's been a learning and stretching experience for sure.
Thank you for all the work you're doing, Mills. Our hat goes off to you. Get some rest, and we'll be back tomorrow with day 5 of coverage and updates.